What's up, Active Lifers? Welcome back to the Active Life Podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Pastuch. I'm your host. My guest today is once again Jason Khalipa, the owner and founder at NCFit and all of the NCFit products and services. Jason has a unique experience as a business owner. He started off as an elite athlete in the space where he now owns businesses. And if you know anything about sports and business, you know that oftentimes, in fact, usually, the best athletes do not make for the best executives. Jason is the rare exception to that rule. And today we talk about how he navigated moving from being an athlete to being a career professional. We talk about the parts of his life that challenged him, that enabled him to be even better at everything else that he does. Like, for example, COVID from the business perspective. His young daughter, Ava, getting cancer from a personal perspective. And I think that the lessons that you're going to learn listening to this podcast can relate to the way that you live your life, to the way that you run your business, to the way that you work in someone else's business. I think it was a super valuable show, and I'm excited for you to listen to it and provide some feedback. So let's get you to Jason. Jason Khalipa, welcome to the Active Life Podcast again.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I love chatting with you. So let's dive straight into it. I would love to get an update as to where NCFit is at from a business perspective today as we speak on what is today, February 9th, 2022. Because you made some moves during COVID that were definitely leading from the front and definitely what I would consider controversial. You know, from
Sure.
Is it a good idea to do that, a bad idea to do that? And I'm curious how it all worked out.
Yeah, I think everything about COVID has been controversial. There's pros and cons, and it could go multiple different ways. But ultimately, when you ask of the health of the company, obviously, we were very healthy prior to COVID. And I think that any business that's still here today was probably at some level moderately healthy before COVID. Because if you weren't healthy before COVID, and then something like COVID happens to, especially in the fitness space, you might not still be around. And so we were very healthy. I would say potentially, for lack of a better term, like overweight. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that we were creating good profits. We had good revenue, but we probably were doing some things a little sloppy. Our house could have been cleaner in a variety of different areas, including our brick and mortar. We had quite a few members. We had profitable locations. It allowed us to get by with maybe not being as streamlined or as efficient as we could have been. Then COVID hits, requires us to create a lot of really difficult decisions. And we made those decisions. I would say that as a whole, we made really good calculated decisions. There was obviously, hindsight's always 20/20, but I think as a whole, we made some very good strategic decisions over the last 2 years, which now we're just now seeing the fruit of all those decisions really starting to come back. And so I'd say we're the healthiest we've ever been because our business financially is in a healthy position, but we don't have the overweight that we had before because we just couldn't get by with any inefficiencies over the last 2 years. So now we're going into this thriving situation for brick and mortar and fitness, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But yet we went through these 2 years of kind of streamlining evolution, making sure the team was bought in and on board. And so I think we're in the best position we've ever been in.
Well, one of the things I agree with you that we're coming into what I would consider, I believe, the next golden age of brick and mortar fitness, because it's one of those distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Yep.
And people got the distance for quite some time.
They got the distance for sure. Yeah.
So one of the controversial decisions that you made early on, I feel like it was April of 2020, but you correct me if I'm mistaken, was canceling all memberships, meaning you were not charging any members of any NCFit location as of whatever that date was. And I imagine that when you did that, I'm curious to hear, you were in the mindset that everybody else was in. This is going to be a month, 2 months, whatever it'll end up being. And then turns out it wasn't quite that short. I'm curious how that went.
Yeah. So before I answer that, which I think is a great question, I need to acknowledge the fact that NCFit is not your typical brick and mortar business. I think that's important to note. We operate in a variety of different verticals. We offer brick and mortar that we own and operate. We operate in corporate wellness sector where we operate gyms globally for a few different clients. And then we have our digital model, which we have for end users and also for gym owners. I say that only because my vantage point is a little bit different than if I had one location in one city. Maybe we wouldn't have made the same decisions the way we did. We had to take into consideration multiple locations, corporate wellness, and the overarching company. That being said, our business has always been and will always be about when someone sees our charge on the credit card, I want them to look at that charge and say, I would have paid double for that, instead of looking at it and saying, man, I really don't get my value. I don't want to, I need to go cancel my membership. So all of us have been in a situation where we go to a restaurant and let's just say we get the bill and the next day we see it on our credit card, or maybe even at that moment you get the bill and you say to yourself, wow, this was an amazing experience. Could have been $100, $200, whatever. But you had phenomenal food, great service, and you walk away saying, wow, that was a great value. Then we've all been in the situation, I'm sure you have too, where you get this bill, it's $200. And you're like, dude, I had a mediocre steak, I had a mediocre appetizer, and I had one drink that was okay. We at NCFit never want to be the business where people look at our credit card charges and they have that impression, because then they're never going to refer friends. They're never going to do any of that stuff. So when this situation came up, you got to ask yourself a really simple question. What are people paying for? Well, they're paying for a service. We were no longer able to provide them that service, and therefore we should no longer charge them for that service. That was the logic. Now, yes, did I think it would take, at Mountain View, for example, it took 13 months to reopen. So did I think it would take that long? Did I realize that we had outstanding liabilities because we had paid in full clients that still were technically owed that money? No, we didn't realize it would go on for that long. And no, we didn't realize we had these outstanding liabilities we had to make sure we made good on. But at the time, it was a very easy decision. They're paying for a service they can no longer receive. We should not be charging them for that. We should then pivot them to our digital model where the price is consistent with the service they're getting.
So when you say outstanding liabilities, what you mean is they had paid for a year in full. They had gotten 2 months out of it. And when you reopened after 13 months, you're like, all right, everyone's paying again. And then you're like, oh man, all these people still have 10 months of service that we owe them before we can charge them again.
That's right. So it definitely changed the game a little bit for our business in the sense that when we looked at our outstanding liabilities, and we're talking quite a bit, I don't know, $70,000, $100,000, let's just say, of paid in fulls that we were not currently servicing. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's an outstanding debt. They paid for something, we were not able to service it. So that did change when we looked at our memberships moving forward. So for example, at our gyms, we no longer have any contracts. We no longer have any paid in fulls. We're just month to month or punch cards. And we believe that if we're not earning your business every single day, cancel. Mm-hmm. Or we could cancel you, whatever. And that was one epiphany we had during COVID.
When you look at the big sports, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, one of the things that is consistent is the best players oftentimes are not the best managers. They're not the best front office people. I forget. I like the show Suits. It's one of my guilty pleasure shows. Yeah. And in one of the episodes, they talk about Michael Jordan's record as a player, Michael Jordan's record as a front office person.
Right.
You are one of the rare athletes to business person who has been able to navigate both. You won the CrossFit Games in 2008?
Yeah, 2008. And then I had a good run after that, but 2008.
I mean, back on the podium a few times. And with a team. And now you are the person who seems to be, in my opinion, the one who's best navigated the business of being an athlete to being in business of business, where it's not the Jason Khalipa brand, it's the NCFit brand, right? And I'm curious where you learned how to do that. Is that something that's always been in you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think to back up with that, I think, I've been in the fitness space. So I'm 20 years I've been in the fitness space. So I started at the front desk of a health club, and I was really fortunate to have some great mentors. I started off the front desk, and I ended up getting into sales when I was in college. And I had some mentors that took me underneath their wing and taught me a lot about the business of fitness. And so from an early age, I knew that I wanted to open up a gym, but I also knew that I wanted to treat it like a business and not a hobby. That was like ingrained in me from 18 till when I graduated from college or whatever, because of the sales and the entrepreneurship that I was surrounded by.
Well, can we pause there for a second? What's the difference? Sure. Because I would love to hear you explain the difference, because when I talk to gym owners a lot, none of them would ever say, yeah, it's just a hobby for me. All of them are thinking that it's a business, but I want to hear how you would define the difference.
Yeah. Yes. So I would define a hobby as one where if tomorrow something happened to you, your business would fail. Or if you want to go on vacation for 6 months, it wouldn't be running. And a business would be something that could continue on without you. That's the best way I would describe it.
Okay.
And so as I'm growing up and I'm learning about the business side, I found CrossFit, fell in love with it, opened up a CrossFit gym, won the CrossFit Games, continued to build the business. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, this is probably 2 years in, I already knew I wanted to run a business, but I thought I was running a business, but I really wasn't. And one of my mentors, who's actually a co-founder of Hurley, his name's Paul Gomez, super nice guy. I remember one day we're sitting outside of our gym, and at that point we were doing good revenue. We had multiple locations, whatever. And he's like, hey man, I'm just letting you know, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, all this is gone. You don't have a business, you have a hobby, but you think you have a business. And I really took that to heart after that and really said to myself, hey, what do we stand for? At the time it was NorCal CrossFit. This is not the Jason Khalipa show. It cannot be. It'll never be something special if it's the Jason Khalipa gym. It has to be something bigger. And as the business has grown, we've now, branded as NCFit. We have a group of people that I think represent more than just me. And so I'm hoping that I want it to be more than just Jason Khalipa, because if it's just Jason Khalipa, it'll never grow to the potential it has.
Well, and you've experienced, when your daughter Ava got sick.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Right. This
good
is a
segue.
Perfect
Great
segue.
Yeah.
I've heard from people who work inside of NCFit that your action that you took was, hey, if it doesn't get my daughter better faster, I don't want to talk about it. Effectively, you turned off your responsibility in the business and turned all of that energy towards helping your daughter, right? If you don't have a business, it's very difficult for you to do that. And I would love to hear what that was like and what you learned.
Yeah, so I wrote a book, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago called As Many Reps as Possible. And it's really predicated on what you just said. When my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia in 2016, it rocked our world hard. And at the time, I'm just forever grateful that I had put in years of hard work to build a business, to surround myself with a great team, to then also have good relationships and all these different things that come into play when something dramatic happens, whether it's COVID or your child getting sick. And that night when Ava was diagnosed, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I've said this before, but it's like, it just is so ingrained in my head. I was just crying. And I wrote this email to like a group of maybe like 6, 7 people. I just said, hey, look, effective immediately, this person's in charge. This happens. We're not doing this. If it doesn't pertain to getting my daughter well, I don't want to be discussing it. It was point blank. And I'm forever grateful for the team that stepped up at that point, because it wasn't the Jason Khalipa show. It was a business. And fortunately, we had these people who were able to step in, and it just kept going. If anything, it probably went even better. And I was able to really dedicate my time and energy into the cure for Ava instead of being in the business. And so I think that was a great segue in terms of looking at it as a hobby versus a business. Every gym owner should reflect on this and say, hey, if something did catastrophic occur, would I be in a position where the business would continue on? And I think they need to kind of take that with a level of like grace and just chill for a second. Don't think that it's going to happen tomorrow, but start working towards this idea that you want to enable people, you want to delegate, you want to build a business so that if something does happen a year, 2, 5, whatever from now, you've been building towards that this whole time.
How long were you out of the business during that time?
So, I remember writing in the email, I said, I don't know. I basically wrote in the email, like, I don't know if this will be a week, a month, a year, but until further notice, like, this is what's happening, right? I'd say that I got high level updates from Matt Walker, who's the president of our company, probably like once a week or so for the first like month to 3 months. And then after that, I needed a little bit of a distraction. So I'd be a little bit engaged. But for the most part, the way that leukemia works is it kind of goes in ebbs and flows. So like the first night is like as dramatic as you could get. And for the next like week, it's like a giant fire hose, like just funneling you at the most challenging situation. But then after that, you kind of chill and you find a little bit of a groove. Then you might be in the hospital, out of the hospital, in the hospital, out of the hospital. So what ended up happening for me is like when I was in the hospital, obviously that was my focus. When we were out of the hospital, I was able to spend a little bit more time on the business. But I'd say probably, it was like that for like probably 2 years.
Mm-hmm. What did you learn about the people in NCFit from a, who you had on the boat with you perspective? Because I don't know the answer to this question. I imagine there are people who you were like, if they have to be let go, they have to be let go while I'm out. And then there are other people who probably stepped up and you were like, wow, I didn't see that coming from that person.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that given the situation at the time for at least the first, 6 months or a year, I would say that everybody on the team, like really stepped up, everybody. And I think what it was they knew me, they knew my family, and there was a level of goodwill, at least for 6 months or a year, where like everybody was really hustling to try and put us in the best position to battle this cancer. So it was, everybody was moving in lockstep because they knew that this business needed to continue on. And fortunately, everybody was rallied around that. Now, after a while, right, some people decided that maybe it wasn't the right business for them or whatever, and they moved on. But I'd say for at least the first 6 months, the key team really rallied hard because they knew that they wanted to help me and my family.
Mm-hmm. And are there lessons that you learned in business or in your private relationship with your wife through that time that made you better at whatever it is that you do in either avenue? So for example, I imagine that you and your wife had conversations that you never had before about your relationship and your kids and your business. I imagine you had conversations with people in NCFit that were different than ever before. Was there carryover there?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, if you look at like three major things have like this point, I think the CrossFit Games taught me a lot. My daughter getting sick taught me a lot, and COVID taught me a lot. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that teach a lot of people a lot of things, but those three in particular have a lot of carryover. So the CrossFit Games, you'll be in this very difficult situation where you really need to have your back up against the wall, very difficult. And you need to learn how to compartmentalize. You need to learn how to utilize positive self-talk. You need to learn how to understand what's in your control versus out of your control. And if you don't do that as an athlete, you're not going to be able to perform to your expectations. It's just that simple. And so I had a sports therapist that worked with me for a long time that really helped me, kind of navigate those two in particular: positive self-talk, understand what's in my control. What was really beautiful about that is that the greatest gift that CrossFit ever gave me, and I'm forever grateful for the games, is it enabled me to learn how to compartmentalize those things. So to learn what it takes to say, hey, you know what? That's out of my control. I can't worry about it. Or, hey, I have a choice today. I can either look at this in a positive light or a negative light. I can either be the victim or I can go attack this head on. And looking at that from a competitor perspective from so many years, it really prepared my wife and I for the challenges that we had. But to your point about conversations with my wife, it's interesting. The first night my daughter was diagnosed. So we show up, the way this works, and I hope no one ever goes through this, but the way this works is there was some, underlying signs that Ava was sick with something. And so we tried everything. We went to every doctor. And ultimately she was falling asleep at school. She had leg pain. It was just like really weird stuff for like months. Even at my sister's wedding, she was on like the flower girl, and she couldn't walk down the aisle. Her legs hurt so bad. And so it was like kind of like these signs. I'm like, dude, like that's kind of weird. So we would go to the doctor and they would basically say that nothing was wrong. And then one day she started getting bruising. And so the doctors decided to do blood work, which hindsight's always 20/20. Maybe we should have done blood work earlier, but they didn't feel like it was the right time. So we got the blood work, we got the call, and the call said, hey, you need to go to the Stanford ER immediately. It wasn't like, hey, when you're ready. It's like, you need to go right this minute. And we were eating dinner at the time. So that was interesting. But we show up to the ER. This is a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but no, we show up to the ER, and this nurse comes up to us and she's like, hey, I've seen a lot of stories in here. I just recommend for you guys to keep a date night. And I remember her, Ash and I kind of look at each other like, dude, like, she's almost putting like a negative omen on it. Like, but it turns out she had seen a lot of stories. And at that night at 1 a.m., we got the bad news, formerly the bad news. And we took to what she said to heart. at the time I didn't want to listen, but in the future, we took it to heart and we started having date nights once a week where we would be in the hospital for months on end and we would just go, wherever it was, right next door, whatever. And we would have those date nights where we had the opportunity to have adult conversations. And those were instrumental in us navigating difficult times. And we continue to have those through COVID as well.
Mm-hmm. And has that come into your business in any way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, back to the business, right?
Well, the reason why I'm asking that way is I don't want to make it seem as though I only want to learn about the business. COVID was a crisis.
Yes.
And not to compare it to your daughter contracting cancer. Some of the same strategies that are used, I imagine, in one work in the other. And I can imagine that you and maybe Matt Walker, I'm making this up, could use some time where you're like, let's just go spend some time together where we're not talking about the business and what we're going to do about it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And look, there's 100% parallels between the Ava, my daughter getting sick, and COVID, 100%. And those type of conversations we're referring to, yeah, they're very important. I mean, Matt and I are very fortunate that we met when we were both, so I met my wife when we were 14. I met Matt when we were 14. And I'm very, very lucky to have both of them in my life where, we've been able to have those real relationships so that when challenges do occur, you can navigate them as friends and as business partners. But, to say COVID, as a business owner, you really had to reflect and say, hey, this is outside of my control. One of the biggest challenges I struggled with was we had a thriving business, hundreds and hundreds of members per location. We were doing great. And to watch the doors just get shut and to watch this baby that you spent all your blood, sweat, and tears building and to have it just taken from you and to see your revenue go from whatever to zero was very difficult. And I had to remind myself not to become resentful against the government or whoever, which was easy for me to want to do, but to remind myself that it was completely outside my control. What was in our control is to pivot to digital, pivot to this, optimize here. And that's what we ultimately did because it was a really easy time to fall victim to, I own brick and mortar gyms during a pandemic. I'm set to doomed to fail. Whereas that wasn't an option. I think that was a learning lesson from Ava, right? Like you, there's no other choice. Like when your kid gets sick, there is no plan B. It's plan A. We are going to get you well. That's it. Right. Or do whatever we can to get you, get you there.
And her status now is full remission. Yes.
Yeah. So the way remission works, and this is something I didn't know until obviously I got in, became someone involved, is that actually, so the way it works is that with leukemia, it's a 2.5-year treatment plan for girls, is 3.5 years for boys, but that's switching now because of new technology. But anyways, you go into remission pretty quickly where you can't see the leukemia cells underneath the microscope at certain levels. But what they know is that if they don't continue to treat you for X amount of years, it will always come back. So fortunately for Ava, she has been in remission for a long time, but she'll be considered cured in about 18 months. And what that is, that's 5 years post-treatment. And so we got about 18 more months, and then we're really popping the champagne because that's a big, big, big milestone.
I was going to say, we've got to be a party for that.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Yes. We had a really big party when she finished her treatment. We did a very big party for that.
Well, I was excited to see, I remember when you posted that she was done with treatment, and I was excited to see all of that fold out the way that it did, or unfold the way that it did. Because forget about just, I don't know you personally. We've spoken a few times, but I've never met your daughter. But as a father, I can't imagine going through it. And it's not even about me. It's not about you. It's about the kid who doesn't deserve to suffer the way that I know that they must need to get through that. So it was really nice to see that she was done.
Yeah. And like I said, hindsight perspective is very important. I don't wish our experience on anybody. I don't. Mm-hmm. We went through some really difficult, dark times, but it has made my wife and I in particular, and probably Ava and the whole family. First off, the whole family's gotten closer, and we've learned how to navigate difficult situations better as a family. And that is one of the blessings that's came from this, is that we could always compare things. Like I remember, Ashley hosted a major fundraiser the other day, last week called Ava's Kitchen. She had some big challenges come up. The venue got canceled on her 10 days in advance. And it wasn't what she wanted to hear, but I just looked at her, I was like, this isn't the worst we've been through, Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because we were relatively young when this experience happened, you kind of start comparing everything to those moments, and it really puts things in perspective at that point, just like in business, you're going to compare everything back to when your gym was shut down on March 15th and you're going to be like, all right, we're okay.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you no matter what it was. For somebody, it was they skinned their knee. They slipped on the sidewalk and they skinned their knee, and that's the worst thing that ever happened to them. And when they flip out, you're like, what are you flipping out? Like, that's not the worst. Like, no, this is the worst that's ever happened to me. And so for them, it's like, well, that's the same as anything that we would experience. That's the worst for us. So it's interesting. You go back to that. For me, it was Hurricane Sandy wiping my gym off the face of the earth. And it was just,
there you go.
Going back to that, like, well, I saw everyone else was still running a business, and I went from successful to zero overnight, no house, no business, no nothing. So yeah, you go back to that and you're like, we can get through this.
That's right. And it kind of like, for lack of a better term with David Goggins, like calluses your mind and builds your confidence. And that being said, you don't wish that upon. Like, right. I never wish that Hurricane Sandy had impacted your family and your business, but if it was going to, there's going to be some lessons learned from it.
Mm-hmm. And we have choices within it.
That's right.
So June 2020 or 2020, I think, you decided to go the licensing route and open NCFit affiliates, right?
Mm-hmm. And
I know that you tried to go big with it. You've come back to going small with it. Can you talk about that and that whole experience?
Yeah. This brings up obviously, Savon and I had a really long podcast about like my history with CrossFit. And
when was that?
This was like maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, we did a podcast, and if people can listen to that, they can understand some of the background that I've had with HQ. And in terms of, I worked really hard for a long time to try and create a relationship with Greg, to talk about the affiliates, to create some level of consistency. And I shared with him my concerns. I said, hey, because as an affiliate owner, as someone who was teaching seminars for CrossFit, as someone that was rocking NorCal CrossFit as hard as you could, I had concerns. I would voice those. But
what were they?
Level of consistency. Greg's model is always the cream will rise to the top. Mm-hmm. And he, one thing for sure, you knew exactly what you're going to get with Greg, always. Mm-hmm. And you knew exactly what you're going to get with Dave, to be honest. And with Greg, he was like, look, man, I'm never going to tell anybody what to do. Let them do their thing. And I thought, okay. But then we had to make a business decision on our own, right? You want to do it that way? I get it. And I respect that. But then we are required to kind of pivot. And what ultimately happened was I sat down with Greg and on a number of occasions, and sometimes he would meet me and sometimes he would say he was going to meet me and not end up showing up. But in either case, I just voiced to him like, hey, your model has always been the cream will rise to the top. But what happens once you become the cream? Then ultimately everything else starts to bring down. And I was tired of telling people what we weren't, and I wanted to tell people who we were. I was tired of sharing with them. Maybe they had a poor experience somewhere else, but they bucketed all of them into one level. And I said to Greg, I said, I don't want to try and reinvent the wheel. Let's just create some basic streamlined approach so that one gym can be at least similar-ish to the other one, at least a little bit, right? You don't need to make everything, but we can't have these massive gaps because ultimately it hurts the brand. And we didn't see necessarily eye to eye there. And so ultimately we rebranded to NCFit to be more in control of our own destiny. And that, we wanted to be in control of our destiny. We wanted to be more indicative of the programs that we offered. We didn't only offer CrossFit. We offered a variety of programs. And that was the first initial switch. Then, with everything that happened with George Floyd, I'm not necessarily happy with the way things switched with CrossFit and with Greg and how everything went down. I'm not. I don't have a good feeling about it. But ultimately, it occurred the way it occurred. And I called Greg and I just told him like, hey, I need to kind of now just navigate our own way. And at the time we'd already rebranded, but then we officially de-affiliated when a lot of that went down. And that was a long time coming for us. But that all being said, I wasn't proud or happy of the way it all orchestrated itself. And I wish it had gone down differently. And I think a lot of people probably wish everything had gone down differently. So when that happened though, and Greg and a lot of affiliates were de-affiliating, we have quite a bit of gym owners that are part of what's called the NCFit Collective, which is ultimately our session plans and programming, quite a few. And we've been providing resources that we used in our gym to them for years. And they knew us. We had a Facebook group, everybody, whatever. And we had a lot of them come out and say, hey, we want to dive deeper with you guys. We don't feel connected to CrossFit right now. We want to dive deeper. We had a big demand. People felt like they were alone and they wanted to feel like they were connected to something. And so ultimately that encouraged us to roll out our own license program. And when we did that, we did it with the concept of rising the tides, the concept of creating something that was kind of like a evolution of what we saw in CrossFit, right? Where there was a lot of beauty in CrossFit, but there were some things that maybe we saw challenges with. So we want to try and streamline it a little bit and create our own kind of flair or our own model of it. And we rolled it out and we soon realized that it was a bigger task than what we realized. So we rolled it out. We got 100 partners like that. And then we stopped accepting partners because what we realized was we were actually creating the exact same thing that we were trying to avoid, which was we wanted to create consistency. We wanted to provide, value for these partners, a group of partners that treated their business like a business, not a hobby, all the things that we love, right? Rise the tides. And we saw it very quickly like, we're not doing what we set out to do. We're growing too fast. So we stopped getting new partners. We took a year with just these 100 to really refine and develop what we were looking for. And then ultimately we came up with what was going to be the future, which we dropped it from 100 to 9 licensed partners now, where everyone is somewhat streamlined in their branding, in their messaging, in their programming, which we believe is the future of what we want to do from a license perspective.
What makes that different than a franchise?
Well, so with a franchise, you could basically, great question. With a license model, essentially there's varying degrees here. It's not so cut and dry. So in a license model, traditionally you have the most kind of like open, which is CrossFit. That's as like open as you can get. You pay to use the mark and you can do whatever you want with it, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a model. And obviously it's been successful. I want to acknowledge the fact that the CrossFit model allowed me to build a business. And I'm forever grateful for the low barrier to entry. They had a low barrier to entry. Get your level 1. At the time, I paid $500 or $1,000 for my license fee, and you're able to attach yourself to a growing brand, and that catapulted our business. So I'm very grateful for that. But with that low barrier to entry and with that lack of consistency comes some challenges. So we also didn't want to be a franchise where we told everybody exactly what to do, because I also believe that good ideas can come from the community and we could build something special. But we had to have branding guidelines where at least all the gyms looked similar, acted similar. And so that's the way we've done it. So we're not a, CrossFit model. We're not a F45 model. We're identifying somewhere in the middle through branding guidelines.
So if I understand what you're describing, to break that down, a franchise says, this is how you do it. A license has the ability to say, this is the name you put on the building and you can do whatever you want with it, all the way up to, this is the name you put in the building. This is how it should look. Do with it what you want. All from one to the other, all the way in between.
Yeah. And there's a lot of factors that play into that, right? Like franchises traditionally have like a % of revenue that are paid back to the group. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of factors involved, but ultimately what you can do in a license is you can require your partners or licensees to abide by specific branding guidelines. And so that's an easy way, or not an easy way, I shouldn't say that, right. A way to provide consistency. Say, hey, if you want to be an NCFit gym, you need to look this certain way. And then ultimately it's up to them if they want to do that or not. And if they don't, then they shouldn't become a partner. And if they do, then great.
How did you go from 100 to 9? And when I ask how, did you turn to them and say, here is the criteria? Or did you say you fit, you don't fit?
It was a lot of like, hey, over the last year, we've learned a lot. We had 2 different types of partners when we originally signed up. We did partner A and partner B. Partner A meant that they did like almost like a full rebrand. It would be like NCFit XYZ. Partner B was like, Phoenix Strength NCFit partner, as an example. But what was happening is there was a lot of messaging, because you would have a gym like CrossFit Phoenix, right. CrossFit whatever, NCFit partner, and it caused mixed messaging because they're using 2 license marks together, which they really couldn't. And so ultimately went back to everybody. We said, guys, look, this is the future of the NCFit program. when we rolled it out, we provided all these business tools, these monthly webinars, we did all these different things, and we're still going to continue to do that, but we're going to do that underneath the collective now. So if you want to be NCFit branded, we got you covered. If you want to just utilize all our resources and tools, we got you covered too. And so most people just decide to continue as the collective member and not pay the fee or rebrand their gym to the NCFit, which we're okay with.
Totally, because now you know who's in.
That's right. That's right. And the future of that, like we said, it's still evolving. But what I do know is that the heart of what we were trying to do, the heart of it, was not to make money. Mm-hmm. Frankly, on the license fee, I don't think NCFit has actually profited anything. We've only been spending on salaries and those different types of things. So we're probably even on the whole project as a whole, because there's legal fees and paying people to make sure we service them effectively. But the goal was just to provide this network of like-minded people to rise the tides together. And I think we're just now capturing that.
What do you get out of that? And I want to ask you this in a really specific way. You are smart enough to know that no business exists to make money, but money is necessary for the business to exist.
For sure.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong in my mind with making a lot of it by providing people with more value than they're paying you for. So what is the value of creating a license model that causes you all these headaches that it absolutely has to cause you that doesn't pay?
Yeah, good question. Because you're also extending your brand. Mm-hmm. So you're extending your brand. As of right now, it's a phenomenal marketing tool for us. We're able to then provide our partners with marketing campaigns each month, and we can all speak about it at the same time. And so it creates more like a microphone to kind of boost our message. And we also have really cool people that are a part of it. So I'd say it's a great marketing tool. It's also a good way for us right now. We're just getting our bearings together. And I think in the future, it will become a profit center where we're able to do merchandise and different types of stuff through them, similar to the way CrossFit is pivoting. But as of right now, we are very, very close to feeling comfortable with what we want to roll out with for the future. But it took us a year to get there. So as of right now, though, it's a great marketing tool. And we have really great people on the bus that I think want to build something special.
I believe, from watching you from a distance, much of your personal brand and credibility has come from doing things that don't make you any money. And, so I mean, look, winning the CrossFit Games in 2008 probably paid you $50.
1,500 to be exact.
Oh, perfect.
But I had to get there and everything. So maybe
right.
$50. Yeah.
Right. And then you ran the box to business with JP for how long? 2 years, 3 years?
Oh no. Yeah. Multiple years. And that for a fact never made us any money. We donated all the proceeds from that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was the kind of, for people who don't know, it was you and JP, I forget JP's last name, from Brick.
Perlmutter.
Perlmutter, right. And right. The P is Perlmutter, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jarrett Perlmutter.
Right.
Yeah.
And you two were out teaching gym owners how to go from being basically a clubhouse to some principles of how to be a business. And while you were donating all of that money to charity, what you were doing was creating content and creating evangelists who were like, Jason Khalipa and Jared taught me how to run a successful business. In the future, when you go to launch something where you say, hey, we can help you continue running a successful business with these lesson plans, with this, why wouldn't they trust you? Why wouldn't people trust you?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of that, right? There is a business case for that. It was also just the fact that I'm a big believer that I want the tide to rise. And so if I want our business to do well, I need all the other gyms around here to be doing well too. And that's still my idea today. Because the more people that are introduced to fitness, functional fitness in the right way, the more it just creates this bigger ecosystem. So the more that we were able to make an impact on these gym owners to take home more money, to put more money in their coaches' pockets, the more opportunities they had to go impact more lives. With more lives impacted, the bigger our industry gets overall, which I will subsequently win from long term. Mm-hmm. That was like if you want to talk about the business case of it, that's a business case of it. And then ultimately, man, like, dude, I want to see people make money. It's these gym owners on average, when we do all these box to business, the average take home income was $2,000 a month. I started thinking to myself, what is the longevity of our industry? What is going to happen here? What is going to happen? Mm-hmm. And, that was very scary. And so the more we could share just some basic business principles, I think that was helpful for gym owners. And we're looking to host a collective summit here coming up like in the summertime, where we kind of go back to those roots a little bit of those box of business and bring it back and talk business, because in our industry, we don't have much of that going on.
Mm-hmm. No, we don't. And, it's interesting. I talk a lot with business owners, gym owners, and there are a significant number of them who, when I ask, if you were starting over again today and you had the opportunity to be a coach who's paid very well in someone else's gym or a gym owner, which would you have chosen? They're like, if I could work in a great gym and get paid really well, I would rather work in someone else's gym. And I believe in I'll go a little bit further than you. I think maybe to the other side, it feels like a big Ponzi scheme, the fitness industry. Like there's going to be all these people who enroll in a business and 1 in every 10 are going to make a living doing it. But we make it look.
Yeah, look, you could look at most businesses, like take restaurants, right? 1 in X amount fail. The 1 in X amount are successful. And I think the reason why restaurants have a big correlation with fitness is because a lot of people get into fitness because they're passionate about it. I think that passion is very important. The authenticity is key, because people could pick up on the bullshit. The problem is you could be a phenomenal chef, but it doesn't mean that you know how to operate a restaurant. And it's the same thing in fitness. You could be a phenomenal coach. You could fall in love with this, call it CrossFit, call it whatever you want, that changed your life. You lost 100 pounds. You're forever grateful for fitness for doing that, but doesn't mean you should open up a business. And I think that if you are going to open up a business, go for it. Just be real about the fact that you're taking on a lot of risk and liability. And that was a piece of CrossFit that I think we need to be real about. CrossFit was the best thing from a business perspective that opened my eyes, right? Like it created the opportunity that we have today to run the business we do. With that low barrier to entry, I don't know if I would have been able to open up a gym had I not had the CrossFit model, which I rented a 1,000 square foot space. I put first month's dues down, first month's rent down. I got my $1,000 trainer certificate and I went. Today, I don't know if we'd have the business we had if we didn't have that CrossFit model in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And so those are important notes to make. But with that low barrier to entry, it also allows anybody to kind of go out there and go do it. And even myself, I wish I had spent more time evaluating my business model, my business plan. But at that point, I was just fired up about fitness and wanted to start a business.
Yeah, I don't know that many people who reach the level of success that you've reached, objective or subjectively, would say, yeah, I started exactly right. I think part of the reason why you're able to navigate to where you have is because you've made mistakes, you've iterated, and you've avoided making the same mistake again. So one of the things I want to pivot to is I want to ask you about the collective and your app. And the reason I want to ask you about those two things specifically is because it's so hard to do one thing well. And you have brick and mortar, corporate wellness, the collective, your licensees, and the end user app. That's a lot of things to do well.
Yeah, we're probably doing them all well or good, and we could get a lot better. I just should do. You start off this conversation with me just saying, "Hey, I want to talk about your." Not everything is always rainbows and unicorns, right? Mm-hmm. Business is tough. Our brick and mortar has suffered dramatically. We saw 7-figure drops in revenue through COVID. And that's a lot to overtake or to recognize. But I think step number one is identifying really great people to put in place to manage each one of those things. That's the reason why we have been able to have diversified revenue streams. I just want to acknowledge that to you is because of great people. Number one.
Well, so do you have one pot of money that feeds all the businesses, or when the gyms don't do well during COVID, do you treat that like the gyms aren't doing well during COVID? We're not going to take money from the collective and put them into the gyms. How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we have taken loans from one company to support the other in the time where we had to, right? Mm-hmm. So right now we own and operate 4 brick and mortars in the Bay Area. We shut down one. It wasn't performing and COVID hit. We're like, it's a good time to just get out, right? And at that point, for those people listening, like I said, I'm not perfect. Our business is not perfect. We surround ourselves with, I think, a phenomenal team that allows me not to let my ego get in the way. And at times you got to make difficult decisions and say, hey, this business, this particular location is not what we should have done. for example, we try to do this 2-floor model, and we had a downstairs and an upstairs. It was like a balcony, and it was a previous gym. And so I thought, hey, let's go in this location. It's already built out, already had showers, no TIs, and we'll have a downstairs and upstairs. I was wrong. It was too small of a space for our model. It was in an area that didn't work for us, and ultimately we shut down the doors in COVID. But being humble enough and just sucking it up and saying, hey, this is the best decision for the business has been helpful. To answer your question, though, as the brick and mortars suffered, we fortunately saw growth in digital, in collective, and our corporate wellness continued on. So we were able to support that through the process.
I want to tie back what you just described into a way that an affiliate owner or a small business owner can understand how it pertains to them. Because to them, well, sure, Jason shut down the gym that wasn't working. I can't shut down the gym that's not working. It's the only thing I have. But in your gym, you might have a weightlifting club. You might have a gymnastics class. You might have a nutrition program. Any one of these things that are costing you money, costing the attention of your staff, costing the attention of you, that are not performing, would be the same as the gym that you opened, Jason. You were looking to add this element to your business. You realized this is not adding an element to our business. It's taking away from our business, so it has to go. The same is true for programs in your gyms.
Yeah, and I think what's important on that note is listening to the sum of members and not some members. I think member surveys are really valuable. The challenge with the competitor team, Oli class, gymnastics class, any niche class, is that there's apply to the niches, live in the ditches. Apply to the applying to the niches makes you live in the ditches. Basically, it's this theory that you want to apply, you want to try and resonate with the largest audience possible. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that where you don't want to be everything to everybody. But the point being is that if you're going to be a functional fitness studio, CrossFit gym, if you have this niche audience of, let's just take, for example, an Oli club, and you have one instructor, the challenge is that is then you taking your business and creating a hobby out of it. Because what happens is if that Oli instructor needs to leave, who's going to coach that class? And so you should look at each vertical of your business and say, hey, are these sustainable models for us, or are these each individually just a hobby? We've had daycare, we've had yoga, we've had spin, we've had Pilates, we've had Oli, we've had comp. You name the program, we've tried it. And at the end of the day, what we come back to is we're a functional fitness studio that professionalizes in this. We have professional coaches, but these niche sectors are exactly that for us, because ultimately we can't backfill the coaches or the ambassador that's leading the charge there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that you have professional coaches in the gym. And one of the things that I've frankly, as someone who really harps on professionalism of coaching, that I've respected from you guys is your ability to use the collective to improve coaching skill, right? So the ability to say, okay, this is the lesson plan. We tested it. It works in our gym. If it doesn't work in your gym, it's not a reflection of it not working. It's a reflection of something about your skill set needs to up level. So how do people take lesson plans and workouts and a 30-minute workout, a 45-minute workout, an hour-long workout, and all these different things and turn it into a coach development tool?
Well, I think it's important to kind of lay some framework here. So
go for it.
CrossFit Santa Clara was founded in 2008. In 2009, we started continuing to expand to multiple locations. At that point, we then rebranded NorCal CrossFit to better represent our brand. I didn't want to promote CrossFit Santa Clara, CrossFit Mountain View, CrossFit this. I want to promote one. As that grew from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 locations, we then captured a corporate wellness account, which expanded us from 4 locations to about 20.
It was HGST, yeah?
At the time, yeah, formerly HST, now it's Western Digital.
Okay.
But when we looked at our bulk of our locations, I was traveling between Mexico. We had a location in Cabo, Mexico, Shenzhen, China, Singapore, Philippines, California, Minnesota. And I would travel between the different locations. I was saying to myself, man, we have to provide a level of consistency, right? We cannot have these variables. And what was happening is this is a long time ago, what was given to most coaches was just a workout of the day. Or even before that, it was just a workout of the day, and they would make up their warm up and whatnot. So we started creating Google Docs for our own gyms on a consistent warm up and a consistent workout. That's how we started, because we wanted to provide consistency in our gyms. Well, over the years, it evolved, and now we have a digital app. And with that evolution, we've recognized that it becomes a coaching development platform for us. I think this is a really important note for any gym owner listening, is that most trainers get their level 1, get a different certificate, USAW, and they get a weekend course, maybe multiple weekend courses, maybe a month-long course, whatever. But what we try and provide is a daily tool to help develop our team so that they're not the same coach they were a year ago, and they're not going to be the same coach they are a year from now. Because every single day they're getting a full written session plan with in-depth conversation about stimulus, timeline, coaching, how to, scale this, how to adjust this. And so now they're developing these skills in their head so they can go run a better class. And we developed that for ourselves, which we then started selling to other gym owners. And what makes it really authentic, and I'm proud of this product, first off, I coach on a regular basis, right? I coach at least once a week. I coached yesterday. I follow our session plans. Every one of our workouts is tested, developed by the person that's writing it. So that when you get this, there's already been tons of tons of hours built up so that a gym owner or a coach can go ahead and perform the best product on the floor.
It's a recipe. Yeah. It's instead of expecting every chef, every cook to walk into the restaurant and cook the same dish the same way, like this much salt, this much sugar, this much pepper. They're all going to have their own style unless if you give them a recipe to follow. And even then their own style is going to come through just a little bit, but it's systemizing something.
Yeah. And we want the style, by the way, like right. Your style would be different than my style, but it doesn't, what we want to do is create bumpers. So like imagine like you're taking your kids to the bowling alley and they have like those guardrails. We wanted guardrails on so you wouldn't have an extremely terrible experience, but you also, so you wouldn't have an extremely terrible experience, right? So that it allows our coaches to provide as many tools as we can for them to go out there and perform their duty on the floor and really go out there and execute and put on a show and make sure members are having fun. The difference between us and other programming providers is that we run and operate gyms ourselves. So if the workouts are not fun, if they're not engaging, if we're not doing a good job, we're not going to be running a profitable business. It's one thing to look at programming in terms of 5x5 back squats. Another thing to think about, what type of experience we're going to be able to provide for these members so that they leave here and they go tell 5 friends about it. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
It seems like you're doing it fairly well.
I do. There's always ways to get better, but yes, I mean, and we have a few different programs. Like, something I think to reflect on is that, me from 2008, we had people, we talked about this actually recently on a podcast, MDVs, thrown up in the corner and thinking it was funny. Mm-hmm. We've evolved over the years. I've evolved. I'm not the same guy I was when I was 21 hitting these workouts. And so our programming has evolved. We now have NC Metcon, which is more complexity, but quite not the same way as what you would see in CrossFit. NCX, which is just fundamental strength conditioning. We have NC Flex, which is a strength and bodybuilding program, because we've seen our athletes evolve over the years and our programming has evolved with it. And we provide that to gym owners as well.
Do you think that members in gyms who are on the collective know that their gym is on the collective?
I'd say 50% of them do. And I don't really care. I don't care. All I care about is, can we provide the gym owner a tool that allows them to go out there and perform the best product on the floor? And everything else is up to them. But if we could just provide this one little area, then I think we're doing our job. And if they tell their members they use us, great. If they don't, that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. And what about the end user app? What is different about that than the collective? Because when you're looking at it from the outside in and you don't own a gym or you don't coach in a gym, there's a lot of things to remember. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So you have the NCFit Collective. It's really designed for gym owners and coaches, period. And we have a network of gym owners and coaches we engage with on Facebook, we engage with through webinars, and we provide them those tools. Very, very, very niche. Like, hey, we're gonna provide this to you. It's the same stuff that I use every single day. Then you have our end user app. And that's been a really interesting business kind of like evolution for me as an entrepreneur, is I realized that I wasn't being authentic to NCFit, and we went the wrong direction, and we're pivoting back. And so I guess this is a good learning lesson for anyone. In the beginning of COVID, we started putting out these what they call NC Go, which is just basically like dumbbell only workouts, follow along, and they definitely serve the purpose. They helped gym owners take these and give them their members so when they're at home, they could use said dumbbells that we rented out, and they could do them at home. And the reason why we gave these to gym owners is because we were doing that for ourselves, and it was great. Great. A year goes by, we're providing these tools or we're providing these resources, and I think we really did a good job. But then I started saying to myself, man, this on-demand follow along content is really popular. Why don't we then scale it from just the dumbbell only to actual like barbells, clean and jerks, like basically your on-demand garage gymmer who left a CrossFit gym or a functional training studio and is at home, but wants to work out with me on their TV. But then I said, let's take it a step further. Let's integrate music. So we signed a deal with Fit Radio. So you can have any music you want combined with any workout you want on demand on your TV in the garage. On the surface, it sounded great. Spent a bunch of money, developed our app. And, you know, what I learned the hard way, and our new app, I don't know when this episode will be released, but our new app will probably be out by then, is more authentic to us. And so what I learned the hard way is that we didn't see the growth that we wanted because it wasn't authentic to NCFit and to Jason Khalipa and our other main stakeholders. I don't use our app by putting it up on TV. I don't do follow along workouts. I go into our gyms, I do our workouts, or I get motivation, inspiration. I use a clock and I go do it on my own in the garage. It wasn't authentic to us. And I was trying to pigeonhole ourselves into a community without really taking a deep reflection, saying, hey, is this actually what we do? And that was been a really big lesson this last year. So I said, hey, let's scratch it. So we basically redid the app, and our new one is just daily workouts, athlete videos to go see what's going on for that day, movement library, and a built-in timer. Let's go. Download our app, get inspiration, go hit in your garage, go hit in your gym, and that's what we got for you.
That's interesting that you made the pivot from basically the high production to low production in the effort to make it better.
Dude, so we basically wanted to be like the Peloton for functional training, for lack of a better term. And I was convinced, I really was. And I don't know how this relates to the brick and mortar gym owner, but I was convinced that the path we were on was revolutionary. We had integrated music. You could choose between hip hop, country, whatever you wanted, with world-class coaches doing functional training. I thought it was great. The problem was that once it came out, there was no one getting behind it to promote it because I don't use it that way in our garage. Mm-hmm. I just look at the workout, get inspiration, watch the video, maybe to see what kind of movements I'm doing, like just like a short 2-minute video, and then I go do it. Right. Or I take our classes. And that's where I think we went wrong.
I get it. The other thing that's perhaps where it went wrong is the idea that like everyone wants to try to be like what Peloton was, right? And hopefully is going to get back to for their own sake.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like running a CrossFit competition. You think they're all making money, and then you throw one and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I used to run a competition on the National Mall in front of the Capitol building. I used to run one in the 69th Regiment Armory where the Victoria's Secret fashion show was. And nice. Right here in Long Beach, on the beach, on the boardwalk, took 2 square blocks of beachfront. We put 1,000 people in the competition and lost $26,000.
Oh.
I'm like, how does this happen? So,
yeah.
You know, it's easy to look at it from the outside and say, if they get 1,000 people and everyone's paying just $20, well, that's $240,000 a year. It's like, yeah, well, I imagine that app cost $500,000 to build, and then the people you pay to run it.
Yeah, and I think yes. So the financial hit, cool. I mean, not cool, but yes, yes, for sure. But the big lesson for me is like I fell on the sword. Right? I fell on the sword. I remember one of our guys' name's Gabe Yanis. Great guy.
I know Gabe.
He goes, Jason, people don't care about the bells and whistles in the app. They want to feel connected to NCFit. They want to feel connected to the brand. They want to get great workouts. The app can't suck, but you're not going to sell them on this integration of Fit Radio. You're going to sell them on the feeling and the atmosphere and this hard work and this idea of effort over everything and this what we embody at our business. And at the time, I'm like, no, we need the bells and whistles. And ultimately, he was right. We don't need super bells and whistles. We just need to be authentic to what we do, put out a phenomenal app that's easy to use, and we're going to attract people that want to put in the effort to live freely and fully outside the gym, right? They're going to be able to hit in their garage, hit in our gyms, whatever it is, to go keep up with their kids.
Well, I think the coolest thing that you said about that whole little synopsis is that someone like Gabe felt comfortable enough to come to you and say, hey, boss, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And he still has a job.
He got promoted after that one. Yeah,
I bet.
That's good.
But that's a good lesson for small business owners also. The idea that oftentimes you're in it. And so you're like, I would love it. Like, we should do this. We should do this. And they're like, well, but I wouldn't buy that, man. And you need to listen to them because they're likely closer to your client than you are.
Yeah. Yes. You're absolutely right. It's like when when you want to put out a t-shirt that has like skulls and lightning bolts, and most people are looking at like, hey man, that's pretty niche. I don't know if that's going to sell. You're like, no, dude, we're going to sell hell of them. And then all of a sudden it comes out and it's a flop. You got to kind of, understand that ultimately you got to realize you have to be authentic. You have to be authentic and listen to other people because your way is not the only way. And I think that's really important. That's been a big lesson for me as I've evolved. I would recommend any gym owner out there, like if you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, I need to develop a team, I wouldn't stress. I would go and sit in the sauna, go for a long walk and say to yourself, what step can I take? One step in the right direction to help work towards that. Because what the problem is, I was talking to jiu-jitsu. I was at my jiu-jitsu gym yesterday. I was having this conversation. The guy is doing jiu-jitsu all day, every day, exhausted for his family. The business isn't making enough money to go pay people. The problem is the business will never make enough money to pay people unless you pay people. And so you got to look at it as this revolving door process where you're not paying a front desk, you're not paying a coach because you don't think you could pay a coach. The problem is someone comes in to experience your gym, you offer them a poor product because you're exhausted, you don't engage with them because you're coaching a class, and now you just lost that new potential member. You might be better off identifying some coaches, paying them a premium, holding them to a standard, allowing you to focus on growing the business. And in 3 months, a month from now, you're in a completely different situation. It just, you got to sometimes put the cart before the horse to really see that all come together.
I had this exact same conversation with a gym owner yesterday. He's like, I need to hire a coach, but we need to make this much money before we can do it. And I was like, no. You're going to make that money because you hired that coach. And until you hire that coach, you're not going to make that money. It's why you've been spinning your wheels.
That's right. That's right.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard because a lot of gym owners are like, I don't have the money. Where am I going to get it from? But
yeah. And on another note, if you start with your coaching, start with the coaches, because the coaches take up a lot of time for the owner operator. So if you're coaching 5 hours a day, that's exhausting. You probably don't have much time to member engagement, following up with new leads, following up with cancellations. You can start there if you are coaching. And if you're not coaching, definitely look into things that you're not as talented at. Like one of the things that I wish I had done differently, and I don't know if you feel the same, is I continued to do our financials way longer than I should have. I should have delegated that out earlier on, focused on what I was good at, and ultimately it would have played out a lot better for us. But I ended up spending hours a day trying to figure out QuickBooks when I could have delegated that out and spent more time doing something that I'm actually good at.
I delegated that really fast. Instagram took me a long time.
That took you out. Okay.
Because like for me, I was like, I don't want to look at the numbers. Someone just tell me if we're making money and how much and where we're losing it, where we're making it.
Right.
But because I hate spreadsheets. But when it came to like our message, who we are, that took me like 4 years too long to let somebody else do.
Yeah. That's a tougher one, right?
I guess. I mean, it depends on where your nightmares happen.
Right.
I mean, like I'll never forget this. Our mutual friend, Kelly Starrett, sent me a text one day and he's like, do we have a problem? I'm like, no, I don't think so. Yeah, what happened? And he's like, hey, that post. And I went and looked at it and I was like, oh man, I know what the person who made this post was trying to say. And they said it in a way that made it seem as though we were taking shots at Kelly. So I went in and edited the post and then talked to the staff member, smoothed it all out. But I'm like, that was the nightmare that I had before doing it. And I'm like, that wasn't that bad. Like we fixed it. Right? Like,
yeah, you fixed it.
Yeah. But it took me years to let somebody else do that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned about social, and because I don't do, like the NCFit, just kind of, we have some great people in charge of that. But what they do is, I think the key is clearly communicating with them what the message that you want to portray is, where is the vision, what's that mission, and then sitting down with them on like a quarterly basis and figuring out what type of, how often, what's the, and this could go for a gym owner who has someone else that's supporting them, but just discussing it. Just setting up some time to even talk about something that's important to your business, I think goes light years. Like imagine if you're a brick and mortar owner and you set up a time with your wife once a week or significant other, I should say, significant other once a week to go over the financial numbers of your business, you'd be shocked at how much more accountable they become to growing those numbers because they're actually tracking those numbers. How many new leads we get in this week? How many conversions we get? What is our revenue like? When you have to report that at dinner to your wife, it really makes you actually track it, versus just like this thing that you don't look at it for 6 months and all of a sudden you realize that you've been shitting the bed on new leads,
Yes. Yes, I do.
Preaching to the choir. So yeah. But that little change can make a big difference for gym owners. And I hope that's a big takeaway. Some of the things that we're talking about today are very high level, talking about big picture, license models, diversified revenue streams, COVID, whatever. But this kind of stuff does not happen overnight. It's an evolution. And if for you as a business owner, you have not been evolving over the last X amount of years, you got to look at, you're not going to be the same business you were a year ago and the same business you're going to be a year from now if you're paying attention, trying to grow. Otherwise, if you're happy with what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not happy, you got to make some changes.
Well, the biggest thing I hope that people take from what we discussed today is that all of your growth, and they've heard me talk about this about Active Life also, it came out of you solving your own problems.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, we solved our own problem. I wonder if other people are having this problem. Let's share this with the world. Other people are having this problem. Okay, well, what problem does that create? Let's solve it. And so it does happen incrementally when you're focused on the next thing right in front of you. That's it.
Yeah.
But
like the collective is the best example of that. I mean, if you're a gym owner listening, look, there's a lot of things that we could say we are really good at the NCFit Collective. And the reason why we're so good is because we've built up an audience of gym owners that allows us to generate enough revenue to go pay the people a lot of money to help us develop this product. Mm-hmm. And we actually test it and curate it in our own gyms. So if it sucks, we have a big problem because we're actually eating the food too. Mm-hmm. So if it sucks, we got a big problem. We're not just putting it out there to the world. So if you're a gym owner, you haven't checked it out, you should definitely check out the NCFit Collective and send us a message because we'd love to chat with you.
Jason, anything else you'd like to share with the audience today?
No, man, I appreciate, us talking a little bit about, adversity and overcoming that. I think that a lot of gym owners, I'm generally a pretty positive dude, but I'm in a really positive mindset with where the industry's at. I think we have 2, 3, maybe even up to 10 years of just substantial growth coming our way. I really feel that way with the brick and mortar business and digital, but brick and mortar in particular, I think people miss that connection like you and I were talking about, and you're going to see people come back in the gym. And I hope that your business is starting to see that growth. And if it hasn't yet, it will soon. If you're in an area where, like California, we've been very restrictive. Bay Area has been very restrictive, but we're finally starting to see that growth come back. And I think we're in for a solid couple-year ride. So if there's anything I could do for you and your business, just hit me up. But that's it, man. It's just, I'm proud of every gym owner that's been able to overcome the adversity of COVID. And now it's time to celebrate that and go smash for the next, decade to come.
I love it. Jason Khalipa, where can people find you?
Probably easiest place at Jason Khalipa on Instagram, nc.fit. NCFit Collective. Go check it out. All those channels, that's the best place. We also have a podcast that we're really trying to, ramp up and build back. It's called Effort Over Everything, kind of the rallying cry here at NCFit. Go out there, put in your best effort. That's the biggest thing that I try and teach our children. And that's what we try and do with the business too.
I love it. Thanks for coming on, man.
All right, brother. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life Podcast. Remember, if you feel inspired by our vision to humanize the healthcare industry, professionalize the fitness industry, and empower individuals to live their lives, to reclaim their physical freedom, to develop careers, helping people reclaim their physical freedom. All you need to do is head to activelifeprofessional.com, find the appropriate link that represents you, and get in contact. We'll see you there. Turn pro.